If you're like me and you have a 2000 to 2006 Chevy Tahoe or Suburban or Silverado, those kind of trucks that have the 4.8, 5.3, and 6.0 liter engines in them, you might be experiencing this particular little problem. And that is when you're inside the vehicle, you put the key in the ignition, turn it on, your instrument panel down here that has your odometer and your gear selection showing isn't illuminated. Now supposedly it's a very common problem, so we're going to attempt to do two things here. One, we're going to check and see if it's a fuse. If it's not a fuse, we're going to continue on and take the back of this thing apart and see if it's a loose soldered pin. So as mentioned, open up your driver's side door, come over here, pull this little panel off, and now you have access to the fuses. Now you're going to want to look for your ignition 0, which in my truck is this one right here. Get yourself either some needle nose pliers or some of those plastic little fuse puller things that some vehicles are equipped with. Pull it out and check it. Now in my case, the fuse is fine, so I'll put it back. So in my case, it's the more difficult task, which is put the key in the ignition, put it into neutral, bring the gear shift all the way down. Now we got to start taking off the dashboard. So it's going to be a bit annoying from this point forward, but this sucker should just pop right off. Bring it off easy so you don't break it. Oh. And all of a sudden mine starts working. For a second. Hang on. What the hell? See if I can push my gauge cluster back on. What the hell? Okay, there's something back over here that's interfering with it. So now it's just a matter of finding out what it was that was causing it. I'm going to guess that maybe it was a wire behind the stereo, which is right here. But at least now with the dash piece out of the way, I can put it back in park and take the key out of the ignition and turn off that god-awful noise. Now I'm wondering if I have a short, because again, I haven't owned this vehicle for very long, but I can see that the gauge clusters and everything's all illuminated, but the light is off. I should turn all the lights off, but they're still illuminated. Wonder if maybe my... that just dims it and brightens it. Shouldn't be on right now, right? So that was weird. I was pushing the dome override button and all of a sudden the lights turned off. What the hell? Okay, so maybe that's just a feature. Alrighty. So that's not the cause of our problem. Alright, so in any event, we've got a 7mm bolt here, 7mm bolt down there, one more up over here, and one more down here. We'll take those off and take our gauge cluster out. And we'll set those 4 bolts off to the side here. Now, again, you're going to have to put the key in and then drop this down to first gear. And now with the gauge cluster pulled out, you now have access to that pin back there, so you can take that plug out. So what you have to do is grab this little pin on the top side, pull it down, and then you should be able to start wiggling this down. And that's this pin up here. Now we turn our gauge cluster over, and we've got little tabs like this. Pull out and take off. And with a little help from a screwdriver, we now have access to the back of this thing. And this little circuit board here comes just straight off. There's nothing holding it in. Be very careful of those little wires right there. And now we start inspecting for damage or dirt. And assuming we don't find anything, we move on to the next step, which is checking these little connectors here, which, as it appears, all of mine are good. Now, normally, it's one of these suckers that goes bad, which causes that whole thing to start going wonky. But all of mine actually appear to be good. I'm even checking the ones on the side here, which means I must just have a loose wire somewhere in my dashboard. But if it does turn out to be one of these that's your problem, find out where and how you can solder it. Get yourself a little soldering iron and try not to cross any of your little circuits anywhere. Resolder it, and then it should be golden. But for me, of course, as it is with all things, mine is not the quick and simple solution of a fuse or a little solder. No, I'm going to have to hunt down a bad wire. Hooray for me. So, I think the best thing I can figure out here is that this connector is loose. Maybe it needs to be replaced, or maybe I need a new gauge cluster, period. But it seems to be when I wiggle this around or push it up or down, every now and then that illumination will just fade away. And I know that I probably won't be able to install it back into the cluster up here and get the whole thing reassembled and have those lights stay on. So I wonder if maybe I can glue them, or maybe I just need to look at it again and see if there's some solders that have broken off in there or something. So I glued that little connector that's up there, and now it's all solid, so that when I put the dashboard back in, gauge cluster illuminated. So this really helped me out. I hope it's been educational for you guys. I'm out of here.